Knowing when to pay your credit card statement can seem a little bit like a confusing game. You see, if you make one wrong move, you can find yourself losing at the credit score game. In fact, you actually want to avoid this really simple mistake that I made that caused my credit score to drop by nearly 20 points. This is actually such a simple mistake, and to think that this mistake has nearly the same impact as opening up a new account on my credit profile is quite mind-boggling. Now, make sure that you continue to tune into this video because I will be getting into the detail of that mistake a little bit later on. Before we move forward, I would like for you all to pay attention to 3 terms that you need to understand so that you're not confused as we go through this information. One of those terms being statement closing date, the next one, payment due date, and the third one, grace period. Now, before I get into the definition of those terms, I want you guys to consider hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell if you would like to see more videos like this, and also notify the YouTube algorithm that this is a good video and good information for more people like you to view. Now, let's go on to those definitions to help everybody out. The statement closing date refers to the last day of your monthly billing cycle. Now, these cycles typically last anywhere between 28 days to 31 days, and they're tied to the number of days in every single month. Your statement cycle is going to open on the same calendar date every month, and it's going to close on the same calendar date every month. Another thing to be aware of during the statement cycle is after your statement closing date, this is when your credit card issuer is going to calculate how much interest is going to be charged to your account, if any. I want you all to think of your payment due date as the absolute last opportunity that you have to make an on-time payment. If you do miss this date, do understand that you may incur a penalty such as a late fee. Be sure to check the terms and conditions that came along with your credit card to understand what penalties you may incur. Now, understand that your payment due date is typically going to be on the same calendar date every single month, unless you do request from your credit card issuer to change your date to a date that does work better for you. Now, definitely check with your issuer to see if they are flexible with that. If your current due date is posing a problem and you are running the risk of making a late credit card payment. Now, the final thing I want you all to be aware of is the grace period, and this is literally the period where you're not going to be charged any interest before you make that payment. This period typically runs between the statement closing date and the payment due date. Now, do understand that not every single credit card out there actually has a grace period, and I covered this in my worst credit card videos that I'm going to link up here just so that you are aware of some of the credit cards out there that are literally going to charge you interest as soon as you make a transaction. So definitely, again, check the terms and conditions that came along with your credit card to ensure that you are not accruing interest before your payment due date. Now, do understand that this is also occurring while your current statement is still open and ongoing, and I'm going to put a graphic up and explain this graphic to you so that you're not so confused, because this can become a little confusing with overlapping dates. Now that you know the difference between payment due date and statement closing date, let's go ahead and move on to looking at my Chase Freedom Unlimited credit card statement so that we can see this in action in the real world. The first thing I notice when I take a look at my Chase Freedom Unlimited statement is the new balance. Then beneath that, you will see the minimum payment due, and below that, you're going to see the date that that minimum payment is due. One thing that I don't like about this setup is that for an unsuspecting credit card customer or user, they're going to look at this and they're going to think that only the $40 is due, because that is where the focus of the call to action is on this credit card statement. The call to action really isn't focused on what's up big and bold, which is your new balance, because it doesn't really say that it is due for payment, just $40. Now, thankfully, due to the Card Act of 2009, and CARD actually stands for Credit Card Accountability, Responsibility, Disclosure, credit card issuers have to present the information that you see down below that shows the minimum payment warning and how much it's going to cost you. So through that act, they are required to show you how long it would take you to pay off your credit card if you only make the minimum payments, how much it's going to cost you in total if you only make the minimum payments, and finally, if you do have a larger balance, they are also required to show you how much of a payment you will have to make in order to pay that balance off in full in 36 months, and as well how much in total you're going to pay in 36 months by making that larger payment. Every month, your goal should be to pay off that new balance, and I'm going to refer to that as the statement balance, every single month so that you can avoid accruing any or paying any interest fees. Ensure that you do check the terms and conditions because that statement is not going to be true for every single credit card out there. It's going to be true and applicable to most of the credit cards out there, but definitely read the fine print. If anything you do, make sure that you read the fine print for anything that you do sign up for, especially something that can potentially have financial repercussions. When you take a quick look at my account summary, you'll begin to think that I started off this statement cycle with a negative balance, but that is not the case, and I'll explain exactly what happened here. Taking a look at my previous balance, it was at $238, and then you can see the payments that I made total $424, and then the new payments or the new transactions that I made during that statement cycle was around $506. Now, what happened was, remember I explained earlier that there is a statement closing date and a payment due date. So what happened was that the statement closed at that $238, but I continued to use my credit card, and by the time my payment was due, I wanted to ensure that I paid some of that active balance. And when I say active balance, I mean the actual balance of all of the transactions that are currently on my credit card that I haven't paid for as yet. So I wanted to make sure that I accounted some of that payment into my payment on my payment due date to ensure that my utilization rate was at around 3% instead of leaving a balance I would have left it at around 5%. And also, I wanted to make sure I didn't pay any interest, which is why I wanted to pay the entire statement balance. But again, really looking at the utilization ratio for the remaining balance that I was going to allow to be reported to the credit bureaus. So remember that these credit card companies are going to report your credit utilization to 3 bureaus, and that's going to be Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And let me just give a quick definition of credit utilization. So credit utilization really is the percentage of your credit line that you are using. So to put it into simple terms, if you do have a $10,000 credit line and you're using $2,500 of that credit line, then you're going to be using 25% of the available credit that you do have. And what does this mean? This means that it's going to be calculated in your credit score because credit utilization accounts for 30% of your credit score. And to put that plainly, that means it accounts for approximately 255 points on a scale that goes up to 850 points. So it is very important because if you don't get any points on this scale, and I don't even know if that's possible, but if you don't get any points on this scale, then the maximum points that you'll be able to have is 595 points, and that's going to be considered either a fair or a poor rating depending on who's looking at your credit, and typically it's going to be considered a poor rating. So this is something that is very important for everyone to understand. Now, as promised, I said that I would put up a graphic that shows a timeline to help explain everything that I talked about with the statement closing date, payment due date, and the overlapping. So here we go, and I hope that this is pretty clear for everyone. Now, in this graphic, I'm just using the dates from my Chase Freedom Unlimited statement, where my statement opening date was February 7th, and my statement closing date was March 6th. Now, this means that my next statement opening date is going to be March 7th, and my next statement closing date is going to be on April 6th. And the payment due date is currently set at April 3rd. And you can see that the due date is set literally in the next statement cycle, and that statement cycle has not yet closed. And then you can see by this line here, this is the grace period before you are going to begin to be charged interest. Now, if you pay this balance in full by the payment due date here, then you don't have to worry about accruing or paying interest on anything else, and the interest is going to be on that remaining portion that you will have time to pay through up until the next due date. And that's something that you want to avoid. So I know it's a little bit confusing, but this is the graphic that shows the overlap between when your payment is due during your second statement cycle and how the first statement cycle closes and then the second statement cycle opens. The mistake that I made was paying off my statement balance and my active balance, and allowing a $0 balance to be reported to the credit bureaus. Now, when this happened, this is only on one credit card. However, my credit score dropped by 20 points approximately. And this was temporary, and it went back up within like 1 month once I reported usage on that credit card. However, it allowed me to realize what the sweet spot is, and that is, yes, you do have to pay off your statement balance by the payment due date. However, you do want to pay a portion, not all, but a portion of your active balance, so that your active balance is somewhere around 1% to maximize your potential credit score, or at the bare minimum to maintain your credit score as much as possible. So I hope that is pretty clear for you all, and if you made it to the end of this video, thank you all so much for watching. Consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video. You have to at least like the video if you made it this far, and hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss any future video uploads. And of course, as always, if you make it to the end of the video, you earn a high five. So come on, time to get your high five.